Annie's marches now, or at least NCAA tournaments, 1 win, 7 years. Not favored in the game. People forget that, but that was the first 5 seed, not favored over a 12 and 20 years. Colorado State was pretty good. I think they proved that not just against Memphis, but against Maryland. But still, I think Memphis should have won the game. Memphis was up at the half. Elijah Seegers, do you know that the Tigers are a second-half team? Did you know that they outscore the opposition in the second half? Well, they score 44 points. That's 8 better than they get in the first half. But here's, in my mind, what happens. First off, let's start with the obvious, and that is you didn't have Tyrese Hunter in the game. You were able to get by the championship game in Fort Worth without him. Now you're going up a step in competition level, and Colorado State certainly was that. Secondly, they couldn't stop the guard, Evans, from shooting threes. He had a career night. Now, he's a solid player. He's only a sophomore. I would bet you, particularly if Nico Medved goes to Minnesota, like I suspect, I would bet you Evans will end up at Minnesota. I don't think he'll stay at Colorado State. But they couldn't stop him. He had a great game. They did a good job on Clifford, the star of that team. What no one else is talking about that I think really played a major role in this game is that you had no Hunter. You also lost in the second half an effective Colby Rogers, who was brilliant in the first half. At the end of the first half, Colby Rogers turned his ankle. Now, he came out. He couldn't even shoot in the warm-ups to begin with at halftime when the team came out to loosen up for that second 20 minutes. And eventually did let off, shoot some shots. According to Jermaine Johnson, the assistant coach for the Tigers on the postgame show, he said Colby at best was 65%. I'm not sure he was even that. He lacked the lateral movement that he had. He couldn't spring like he had. I'm not sure he made a shot in the second half. May have made one. It was not a pretty sight. So Colby Rogers is ineffective. You don't have Hunter. Unfortunately, P.J. Haggerty had one of the worst games I've ever seen him play. He would dribble into double teams. They did a good job of defending him. I think toward the end of the game, he panicked a little bit, started taking rush threes that were nowhere near close. So your best player, and clearly he is your best player, had a bad game. I don't know how else I can say it, but that's just the unfortunate part of it. It's a shame he didn't get to play against Maryland. Maybe he would have been brilliant, but he was not in that game. Now let's take the guy who was brilliant, particularly in the first half, and that is Dane Danger. As far as I can remember, I don't think Dane Danger ever played more than 31 minutes in a game.
Didn't know that.
40 minutes in this one.
Wow.
Ran out of gas. Now, maybe Penny should have taken him out, but you're in this game and you're fighting for your life. Where do you take him out? This is where it really hurt. And I know I'm going back a long ways, and maybe I sound like I'm making excuses. But had Tyreek Smith not left this Memphis team, that extra guy, in light of the fact that this was not a great year for Nicholas Jourdain. He had 4 or 5 really impactful games, and the rest, he was somewhat mediocre. And again, he was a no-show in this particular game. Now, he does defend, and he did defend on Clifford. So now there was a lot of switching off going on, but he primarily was your guy, and I thought he did a good job of slowing up. But on the offensive side or even getting rebounds, it was not a good night for Jourdain. So that's why Danger's got to keep playing. You don't have Tyreek Smith that you had planned in the preseason. So if people are talking about when you built this team, they didn't expect the kid would take $200,000 and then walk, which is really what he did. So Danger runs out of gas. PJ's got a bad game. Colby Rogers is ineffective in the second half with an injury. It was not a good night for Jourdain either. And you end up losing in the first round, just like you have 3 other times.
Yeah, it was just a recipe for disaster in that second half. I think Colorado State's no middle defense, their emphasis on it in the second half was really, really key to really stop the bleeding that Dane Danger was causing them in the first half. Because Dane Danger was great. And once they took away Dane Danger in the second half, you could see, like you said, P.J. Haggerty try to play hero ball, knock down shots from long range. That's just not what he does best. It's get to the rim. It's get to the free throw line. And once that was taken away, I think there was a little bit of panic that really set in late in the game once they got down.
And you just didn't have another guy who could really step up with Rogers not playing as well. Kojay is a Kojay. He's the third-string point guard. Don't forget Dante Harris is out in this game. And I do think Danger, they did emphasize that at the half. That was their adjustment, was to try to slow him down. But they didn't have the personnel to really do that. He was just, I think, fatigued. I really believe that played a big role. So now you have to sit here and say it was a fairly satisfactory year. I know the ultimate measurement in a fan's mind is going to be, what did you do in March? What did you do in the tournament? Did you get to the tournament? Yes. Did you win the regular season and the tournament title? Yes. So I think it's a success. You won 29 games, for goodness sake. That, to me, is a success. You had the player of the year, the newcomer of the year, the coach of the year. So a lot of things were accomplished, and I know it's a bitter pill for Penny to swallow because that's where the criticism is going to come. He's won one tournament game in the NCAAs in 7 years. And the other thing is partially the instability that is now the NCAA. You could say in the past, okay, but here's who we know is coming back. We got P.J. Haggerty. We got P.J. Carter. Dane Danger says he's coming back, but he really can't, I don't think. He's going to appeal, but that would be really precedent-setting if he got to play next year. You don't have the ability to say, this guy's coming back. I hear it'll cost $2 million for P.J. Haggerty to come back to Memphis.
Quite a chunk of change.
Well, that would be, I want to say that the Memphis budget, and I'm not 100% certain of this because no one really knows. Somewhere between 3 and 5 is what Memphis has paid their players. I know Penny told me in an off-the-air conversation one day, he thought the budget to win a national title was $12 million. So he's operating 3 to 5. Good, really good at the American Athletic Conference level, not so good at other levels. There was some sort of a blind questionnaire of coaches, and I want to say, and it was all off the wall, who had the most NIL money. I know, and this is part of the reason why Arkansas is in the Sweet 16, 70% of those ballots said Arkansas was in the top 3. I'm assuming Duke is up there. I know North Carolina was not, and that's why they brought in a general manager, and that's why they struggled. I do think, and we'll talk a lot here in the next segment with Mike DeCourcy, but when you look at this bracket now, 7 teams from the SEC are in. That's almost half of the Sweet 16. That's historic. Of course, they got 14 in to begin with, right? So you could say, well, half of them didn't get to the third round. But it's pretty impressive. If you look at the breakdown, you have 7 SEC, 4 Big Ten, 4 Big 12, 1 ACC. Clearly, the ACC is no longer a power conference when it comes to basketball. They've got Duke, and that's it. North Carolina has slipped. We'll see what they do now that they have a GM, and they've decided to keep Hubert Davis. I'll be interested to see how much money. I guarantee you they're going to go up in NIL money because now it's no longer just trying to convince fans that this is the way college basketball is. It's the way college sports now is, that you have to pay the players, and now it's accepted. So now there will be a bigger push from those that have the biggest fan bases, that have the biggest power conference money, that they will have to really spend in order to win. And if $12 million is the budget, that's what it will be. So I think you'll see a bunch of that. But this is an all-power conference Sweet 16. I'm not sure I've ever seen that. We'll see if Mike DeCourcy will agree with that. I know there were some that have said this has not been the best NCAA tournament in terms of really fantastic games. The best game I've seen so far was Colorado State and Maryland, where the shooting guard Lake, with 3.6 left to go, hits a three. You think the game is over. It's a 1-point game. They go into the freshman Derek Queen, and he spins and scores as the light goes on. Now, I will tell you, when I see that play live, I say that's a very good, incredible play by a 19-year-old freshman. When you look at it in slow motion, there are many who will say, he traveled. It's ridiculous. That never should have counted. I think I'm always a believer in technology that can right the wrong. But I think if we go back and you look at every play, frame by frame, you're going to see things that are just ridiculous. You can't go by that. You have to literally sort of go by what you see, unless it's obvious, unless it's a ball out of bounds that only you can see the fingernail hit that. Okay, I'm all right with that. But I don't even think first of all, I don't think that is a reviewable play on a travel. So that makes it irrelevant. Secondly, I think you've got to go by the way it looked when he gets the ball and makes his move. And Zach, Elijah, what do you think is the proper call on this?
I completely understand the technicalities of the people who are asking for a travel because according to the technicalities of basketball rules, 2 steps is what you were allowed, and Derek Queen appears to take a 3rd step. However, that call is almost never made. Never made. So to defer from the norm in such a high-stakes moment, it does not make sense, and we see 99.9% of times in the exact same or similar situations, no call is made. I think of NBA plays like the Kawhi Leonard shot in Toronto. He takes like 4 or 5 steps and it doesn't get called.
The NBA is different because the NBA does allow an extra half a step. It seems to me that's always been the way it has been. I'm just saying to you, when you did you see it live?
Yes.
Did you think that was a travel?
No, I did not.
I did not. It never entered my mind until the replay. And so, therefore, I really believe you have to go back and say, how did this look in real life, in real motion? Because if we slow this thing down frame by frame, you're going to find stuff that you've never seen before that's really not officiated in the most precise way. It happens too fast. And I think you got to go by the regular feel of it. Say to yourself, as I watched the play, what did I think? It never entered my mind that he traveled. Not until I saw the replay. I think you got to go back to, and they do, because I think it's good that they do not make that a reviewable thing, because you do see stuff frame by frame that is not really intended into the way the game should be called. Pretty simple in my mind. Couple of other thoughts. How about John Calipari beating Rick Pitino in a? It was so interesting to me. Cal never said a word about his relationship with Rick Pitino. I know, because I hung around with Cal for 9 years, that I think there is respect, but I don't think there is affection between those two. And basically, that's what Rick Pitino goes. He goes, I knew him when he was a young kid in Moon Township, Pennsylvania. I don't know him at all. His wife and my wife and me and him have never gotten together for dinner. Basically saying, I know Cal. I knew him when he was a kid. I've not really had anything to do with him since then. We are not buddies. We don't go to dinner. And I think he was just being honest to try to sort of say, this is a game between St. John's and Arkansas. This has nothing to do with a relationship or a rivalry or a hatred between two guys. And I think that's true. And then Cal had the better team. Maybe Cal developed these guys as they went along because they were terrible to begin the year. We saw what they were in the beginning of the SEC. They couldn't win a game. No one would have predicted they would be in the Sweet 16 at this moment. And Cal's line was absolutely brilliant. Beautiful. They put us in the coffin. They just forgot to hammer it shut.
Yeah, that's a perfect way to put it. I mean, this team started 0-5 in SEC play, like you said, and a month ago, they were teetering on the bubble of not even making the NCAA tournament. You look at guys like Jonas Adu and Trevin Brazil, who have really stepped up their play of late and were so big in that game against St. John's, who's a physical, bruising defensive team who likes to get on the offensive glass. And they shut those guys down for the most part. R.J. Lewis, the Big East Player of the Year, 3 for 17, benched going down the stretch of that game. How about that?
And how about the way Pitino had to handle that? I mean, I thought that was tough because the guy kept pressing him, and he goes, why do you keep asking me? I'm not going to put my player down. But the kid was 3 for 17. What do you want me to do? He didn't quite say that, but that was the intention of that thought. I think either Arkansas just totally did not care for each other in the very beginning because they always had this talent. First of all, Brazil, to me, is one of the biggest underachievers. He's got so much talent, and he has never put it together for a whole season. You see moments of brilliance in games, and then he disappears. And Adu, to me, is a really good player. And I got to say this because I have not thought much of DJ Wagner. I think he hurt them a lot last year. And this year, Cal has stayed with the guy. He's not, in my mind, as good as his father. He's not as good as his grandfather. And I watched them both play. But he played big in the first 2 games of this NCAA tournament. We'll see what he does the rest of the way. But he finally played like he was supposed to play. You put Adu, you put Brazil, who's got all this talent together. That's a formidable trio.
Yeah. I mean, DJ Wagner, number 1 player coming out of high school, and up until recently, he played nothing like it. But like you said, as of late, he has been playing at least up to some of that billing. He's been controlling the game the way that a top-tier point guard would, and he's been getting those guys in order. They look disciplined. They look good on the defensive end, and I think a lot of praise should go to DJ Wagner for that.
I got to put up one other guy here, even though he didn't play a lot, is Billy Richmond. Billy Richmond hit some big free throws in their first game. Billy Richmond hit a big shot, I think, in the second game. And here's a kid who grew up in Memphis, went away for high school. His dad played for Memphis. He also played for Vandy. People forget Billy Richmond originally played for Vandy. And, I wish him and them the best of luck. We'll do medals. Obviously, the Ole Miss story is pretty darn amazing. I remember asking Ron Higgins, I don't know if, Elijah, you were working with us at this point last week. I asked how many SEC teams would make the Sweet 16. My answer was 6, because the only team that I didn't have in was Ole Miss. Ole Miss becomes the 7th team in. And I started by saying this, people have talked about the buzzer beaters and not many, the Maryland-Colorado State game being the best. The women's NCAAs, you talk about, they still have a long way to go in terms of parity. After 2 rounds, right? After the first 32 games are in. So we're going to start now the second round. Everyone is chalk except for 2 1-9 games. So instead of the 8, it's the 9. So that's a toss-up anyway. So that's pretty well chalk. There's one game not chalk. That's a 2-10 instead of a 2-7. every other game, non-competitive. The number ones won all by 40 points. Like, it was 80-30 in the Arkansas State-UConn game. And that's a 2 seed. Like, so now, as we get down, used to be there were 4 really good teams. Now there's probably 16 really good teams. But 68 teams, there are not. And that shows by the chalk, and it shows by the uncompetitive scores that we have seen so far. So we're going to talk more NCAA. We've got medals that we will do in our final segment, but we are underway. It's all brought to you by Southern Security. I was with their leader, Dawn Grader, in Seattle. We all left a little disappointed. She was talking about the new building they're going to have in Collierville. Let me tell you, folks, it is going to be fantastic. But that's the way Southern Security is. And for 75 years, they have been serving the Mid-South. They've been voted the best credit union in the Mid-South for 6 years. They've been in business for 75. And they always bring you this absolute. The best in rates, the best in service, the newest in technology. And wait till you see that new bank in Collierville. It's going to have every new little wrinkle you could possibly want. And you can join the Southern Security, I call it a family because that's the way you're treated, by going to southernsecurity.org, or you can actually talk to a service team member at 901-452-7900. Whether you're in the market for a loan of any kind, if you would like to have your automobile refinanced, they do it all. That's Southern Security, your home team credit union, federally insured by NCUA. We pause for just a second. We head to Pittsburgh. Our good friend, the Hall of Famer from the Sporting News, Mike DeCourcy, comes your way in just a minute.
Be sure to follow us at Sports 56 WHBQ on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube to watch live video of our shows. Stay up to date with station events and have chances to win prizes. Don't miss out on anything that's going on. Follow us at Sports 56 WHBQ. The first ever preseason pool spa and patio event is going on now at Family Leisure for the first time ever. With unbelievable savings. You want a pool? They're starting at just $19.99. How about a spa? They're starting at just $29.99. Patio furniture sets are starting at $7.99. Cold plunges and swim spas are just, well, wait, I can't even say those prices. But I will say they're priced to move. There are so many deals going on right now during the first ever preseason pool spa and patio event. You've got to come in and see the savings for yourself. But wait, there's more. You can register to win either a free pool, a spa, or a patio set. Yes, a free pool, spa, or patio set. Just stop our Family Leisure to sign up. This is a first time ever pre-season pool, spa, patio event. It's going on right now at Family Leisure. Family Leisure, when you're under I-40, family and fun come together.
You get the best of Memphis for lunch and dinner at Elwood Shack. Choose from house pastrami, corned beef, smoked turkey, roast beef, roast pork, beef brisket, and pulled shoulders, all made in-house. Elwood's fresh baked bread is delivered daily by in our bakery in Cordova. All Elwood's gifts and sweet treats come from Frost Bakery. Open daily for lunch and dinner at Elwood Shack on summer in the Lowe's parking lot. And the newest Elwood's at 4045 and plus Northern. Get the best of Memphis anywhere else at Elwood Shack.
If wedding bells are in your future, you need an unforgettable engagement ring from a jeweler you can trust. And that's been James Gaddis Jewelers for over 60 years. With a huge selection and the best prices, James Gaddis is a master jeweler and diamondologist. Beautiful jewelry from James Gaddis is always the right choice. Choose from rings to earrings, necklaces to bracelets, and gemstones to watches. Layaway and financing available. James Gaddis Jewelers, 4900 Poplar, online at GaddisJewelers.com and Instagram at Gaddis Jewelers. Say I do at James Gaddis Jewelers.
Hey Mid-South, get ready for your next adventure during the Mitsubishi Motors Spring Sales Event at Gossett Mitsubishi on the Pike. 2024 Mitsubishi Mirage. Read Gossett. $199 a month or buy for $16,605. It's 43 MPG. Need more room? Take your pick from 2024 Outlander plug-in hybrid PHEV or 2024 Outlander. Just $399 a month. And listen up because all remaining new 2024 Gossett Mitsubishis are now $2,000 off MSRP. Plus, you always get peace of mind with Mitsubishi's 10-year, 100,000-mile powertrain limited warranty. Get ready for your next adventure during the Mitsubishi Motors Spring Sales Event at Gossett Mitsubishi, 1870 Covington Pike, and 24/7 at MemphisMitsubishi.com.
If you want it, we got it at Gossett Motor Cars.
RHO 13112, MSRP 18605, PHEV RZO 59821, MSRP 489, Outlander RZO 67325, MSRP 33210, includes all rebates and incentives, PF 895, excludes tax title and license CD for complete details, offer valid through end of the month with approved credit dealer stock only.
Now back to Wallow and Friends on Sports 56. Here's the voice of the Tigers, Dave Woloshik.
Speaking of fame, from the Hall of Fame and the sporting news, our friend Mike DeCourcy joins us now. We've got a Power 4 Sweet 16, 7 from the SEC, 4 from the Big 10, 4 from the Big 12, 1 from the ACC, which does not look so powerful these days. You've ranked them all. I kind of agree with your rankings, except I think Texas Tech may be better than where you put them. Good morning. How do you feel about this tournament thus far?
Well, that's the issue with ranking the Sweet 16 when everybody that gets here is kind of good.
Yeah.
That becomes problematic. Texas Tech is very good, but look who's ahead of them: Kentucky, Tennessee, BYU. I think those teams at this point are more dangerous, more threatening to go to the Final Four. But I do like Tech. I think they're an excellent team. They have not had to do some of the heavy lifting to get here that some others have, and maybe that's because they have made relatively short work of their two opponents, especially Drake in the second round. I mean, they didn't blow them out, but they grabbed the lead early, and that was a smart thing to do because of Drake's power at controlling a game. You put them behind, and then they're in trouble. So really smart basketball from Texas Tech. As far as the Sweet 16, I know there are a lot of complaints about the dominance of the major conferences and the absence of upsets. But this has been a tremendous event. And the St. John's Arkansas game, and I know I'm speaking to people across the river who can hear me, was one of the most phenomenal second-round games I've ever seen. I've seen better basketball, but I don't think I've ever seen a second-round game that was that ferociously competitive. It was just a joy to watch.
When you look at Arkansas, remember the start they had in the SEC. Do you think you could make the mistake, the statement that John has really developed this team, or could you just say they really were underachieving until this very moment?
Oh, I think there's no question that he developed the team. And I think that you look no further than DJ Wagner, a player who, I will be honest, I mean, when I get one wrong, I get one wrong, and I'll admit it. And it's always nice that when I get one wrong, it's the positive way. Or it's always nicer when I do get one wrong, it's because it turns out positively. I was not a fan of DJ Wagner's freshman year at Kentucky. I thought John gave him way too much run in that season, and especially in the NCAA tournament game against Oakland, and I thought that contributed to their departure. And I was not a fan of him earlier this year when Arkansas was struggling. But after Boogie Flan went down with the injury, I mean, he really stepped forward. And he is the biggest reason they are where they are right now. The return to health of Trevin Brazile and Jonas Adu was enormous. I mean, that's the thing people forget. I mean, if you watch Jonas Adu at Tennessee, you know what he's capable of. And then you watch him at the first part of this year, and you're like, he's not even, who is that guy? I mean, it was like the invasion of the body snatchers. He didn't look anything like Jonas. And it was because he wasn't well. He wasn't healthy. And now he is, and you see the difference. he is a difference-making player at the highest level of the NCAA tournament. It was a huge figure in helping take out a 2 seed.
I totally have basically said the same thing about Wagner that you did. I watched both his father here and his grandfather, who was an assistant here, but I watched him when he played at Louisville. I don't think DJ is as good as either of those two, to be honest. But he did, and I keep forgetting he's as young as he is. Those, in particular, the grandfather played really well into his later years. But he did come and start to play toward the end of the year, because the beginning of the year he was the guy that was at Kentucky last year.
Right.
Not very
Right.
good. So I do. I think he and Cal gave him the leeway, kept the confidence going, and the kid has become, obviously, a terrific, reliable guy, even in clutch situations. I got to talk about Ole Miss. I mean, because I said that I thought 6 SEC teams would make the Sweet 16, and I have them in my Sweet 16. I did not have a 7th. That is Ole Miss, and their guard Padula has just been amazing.
I can't figure out how no one has figured out, hey, maybe we want to guard that guy. He gets more open shots than just about any player in college basketball, and he doesn't waste them. He's amazing. And Carolina paid for it big. Iowa State paid for it bigger. Iowa State, they really was never in the game. And Iowa State had a really nice year. It did not play as well after maybe February 1, February 15, whatever it was. But they just dominated that team. The Cyclones never got into it. And so really it's interesting because it's a team whose roster doesn't look like the other rosters that are left. Because they are so much smaller than most of the teams that are still playing. Most of the other teams have real size and physical power, and Ole Miss is doing it without that, and they did it against significant programs like Carolina and Iowa State. It's not like they went out and they got a couple of lucky upsets, or they got a favorable draw in the first round against some mid-major, and then got a lucky upset in the second round, so they only had to play a 13 seed or something. I mean, they played 2 big brands, two teams that have some of the size that they lack, and they took them both down easily.
Yeah, it's a tremendous story so far, and I'll be curious to see, because the bracket is interesting. We'll get back to that in a second. I got to ask you about the new hirings that we think are going to happen. The first one, Sean Miller to Texas. Now the word has been McCollum, who to me is unbelievable. I had to look him up because I was, thinking this is another Drake guy. It's like DeVries. They get him from out of nowhere, and this guy won 4 national titles.
Yeah.
At the Division II level. Well, he's like in his early to mid 40s. He's got over 400 wins at an 82% winning clip. That's, to me, like amazing. I said this before, if there was anybody in the country, I would hire a young guy on the up and up. I would hire this guy, and looks like he is going to Iowa. I wouldn't be shocked if Nico Medved, the Colorado State coach, who's got ties to Minnesota, I would suspect he would end up at Minnesota. Anything else that we need to know? Your take on those hirings?
Yeah, I mean, Sean's an interesting one because I had a conversation with him after he had been hired by Xavier. I sat down at lunch with him in June of 2022. And we talked about how draining his fixation with trying to get Arizona to the Final Four had been, and how Xavier looked to be a refreshing spot for him, a place where he could reset and get back to coaching for the joy of it, coaching for what he loved about it. And I haven't talked to him about this, but I'm a little surprised that he was eager to get back to that circumstance. Especially now that the SEC's become what it's become, where the competition is so ferocious that they have 16 teams and 14 of them got to the NCAA tournament. I'm very interested in his thoughts behind that. The Nico Medved thing will happen. There's no doubt in my mind. I think it's been something that the agents and ADs have locked up for a while. Ben McCollum's an interesting one because Fran McCaffrey's time at Iowa was successful, but they never played great defense and never seemed to really address it as an issue. We're not good enough at it. What can we do to get better? They just seem to, we'll make more buckets. And now they bring in Ben McCollum, who is a sort of the opposite of Fran, or has been the opposite stylistically. A team that plays very much a controlled pace. That's a huge difference. I mean, you're really talking about total opposite sides of the coin in terms of style. Now, the only caveat to that is that that's the way Grant McCasland coached when he was at North Texas. And now his team's one of the most dynamic, at Texas Tech is one of the most dynamic offenses in college basketball.
Yeah.
So maybe some of that's just a product of personnel, and you win with what you can win with, and you go that way. And maybe that's what will happen with McCollum at Iowa. But I'm fascinated to see how that develops.
I think it's going to be successful. I think this guy McCollum knows you don't win 4 national titles unless you know something.
Well, here's the interesting thing about that, though, is like he won 4 national titles and nobody went after him.
I know. I
Just
don't understand.
Great.
I don't either.
I wrote a column, 20-some years ago about Division II success and why no one ever went after coaches in that level. I think ADs kind of get into these habits, and some of it's driven to them by the search firms. But the HBCUs don't ever get any love from jobs in conferences that are higher on the seed list, let's say. Robert Jones at Norfolk State has been terrific at Norfolk State. Lavelle Moten at NC Central has been terrific. And they don't get the opportunities that coaches in other conferences that are more or less at the same level often get. And I don't understand that. And it's a different motivation maybe, but the same concept at Division II. Like I said, I wrote that column almost 20, 25 years ago, and very little has changed in that regard.
I would say if I were a president of a university and I were looking for an AD, I'd be looking at this guy at Drake. He hired DeVries before he hired McComb.
Right.
So
Absolutely.
that DeVries goes, West Virginia to Indiana in 1 year?
Yes.
And now this kid, 1 year, he's going to Iowa? I mean, that guy knows his stuff. He knows how to find basketball coaches. That is for sure. Bobby Hurley goes out, in a weird way. Again, he on the referees made some weird comments, but then at least said they went out with honor. At least his team did, and I agree with that. Give me your sense of Danny Hurley.
First of all, if you knew Dan, he is really delightful. You get him away from that rectangle, and he is an absolutely delightful person. Cooperative, goes out of his way for you, very interesting in conversation. One of the coaches that I like the most. He's certainly in that upper tier of coaches in Division I basketball. But when you get him near that rectangle, he is. It's almost like it is a substance, and that doesn't and it feels good sometimes, but then there's the crash, and I do think that he needs to figure out how to be him as a coach, and he's extraordinary, without being the other guy who got thrown out in Maui, who yesterday I don't even remember a controversial call. I don't remember any. There were. I mean, maybe there were some, but they didn't lose because of bad calls. They lost because they didn't control the perimeter down the stretch.
Yeah, and Walter Clayton hit some.
Walter Clayton, when Terrace Reed came off that dribble handoff and he was double teaming along with Diarra, he was double teaming Walter Clayton. As soon as Diarra was not quite in the play because there was a double, so he couldn't get in front of Clayton if the big man Reed was going to be there. And so Reed says, uh-oh, wait a second, there's something happening behind me. I got to go check that out, and forgets that the ball is in front of him and lets Clayton have that moment. And Clayton, smart, heady, confident player, as soon as Reed turned around, he's like, here it is, that's my moment, and throws in that three, and the game is over. That you can't let the ball go when you're in that circumstance. You have to live with whatever's behind you. And by the way, their freshman wing, Liam McNeely, who's now headed to the NBA, was right there on the play. Now, the opposite corner, somehow Clayton had been able to get the ball to the opposite corner. That was wide open. But he would have had to throw the ball all the way across the court, and who knows what happened.
Yeah.
You can't turn your back on the ball in that situation.
8 games coming up this weekend, this Thursday and Friday. Give me the 2 most intriguing to you.
Well, the number one most the most entertaining game, the one I'm looking forward to, is BYU Alabama.
Mm-hmm.
I want to know, before I go in, what's the record for most points ever scored in a Sweet 16 game? Because it may be in jeopardy. I would love to see. I'm not the biggest at looking at point spreads and all that kind of stuff, but I want to know what they set the total at for that game. Because I'm not saying they're going to break it, but I bet they put it up there where it's very rarely ever seen in a college game. 2 phenomenal offensive teams. Very much looking forward to that. And then,
just so you know, it's 175.5.
I think that's low. I really do. I think they're going to both hit the 90s. I do. Because I don't think either one of them is equipped to stop. They're not equipped to stop ordinary to good college offenses, let alone each one is facing one of the very best. So that's kind of a fascinating game. And then the second one I'm really interested in is Maryland, Florida, because I thought all along that Maryland was a really tough Sweet 16 matchup. Now, they were pretty close to dreadful yesterday, about as dreadful as you can be and win an NCAA tournament game. And so was that just, okay, the nerves of getting to the Sweet 16, and now they're going to be fine? Florida was pretty close to dreadful for 32 minutes as well. I mean, they were back and forth in a 1-point, 2-point game most of the game with UConn, while Liam McNeely and Alex Caravan were on the way. I believe the final number was something like 3 of 19 from 3-point range, the two of them. And so what are you doing in a game with a team that can't make a shot? And that said a lot about Florida as well, at least on that day. And then they came through in the end. So that's 2 teams that are both Final Four, maybe even national championship capable, that played pretty lousy second-round games. I still think that's a huge hurdle for Florida. If they can get over that, I think they'll end up playing in the championship game.
I had that in my bracket. I think that's the way it will go. But we'll see. The kid Queen is a fun kid to watch. That is for sure. Mike, we're
most
out of time.
Underrated prospect in the draft.
Yeah.
That's my position on him.
Oh yeah, he's on what is he 19? He looks like he's 14 with the braces and all that. It's a good story. All right, my friend. As always, I appreciate it. When we talk next, we'll have a Final Four.
How about that? All right. Thanks, Dave.
You got it. That's Mike DeCourcy from the Sporting News. We got to take a break. When we come back, we got medals. Brought to you in part by The Spirit Shop. I know you're out. You've drowned your sorrows from the Tigers. Maybe you were celebrating Ole Miss or Arkansas. It's simple. You go to The Spirit Shop to reload. That is the way I always do it, right there. Poplar and St. Nick, 4848 Poplar, the little log cabin right down from Clark Tower. You've passed it by a million times. There's everything you could possibly need. Any kind of accessory, any kind of rub for the rim of your glass for any kind of craft cocktail. If you want valuable bourbon, rare bourbon, they got it. You want up and coming, they got it. You want the newest tequila, they got it. You want to find out a middle of the road wine that is going to end up being valuable, they give you that education and they've got the product. All you got to do is stop by right in the heart of East Memphis. Restock today at the Spirit Shop. Back in a minute. We got medals coming your way.
Start your day with Sports 56 Mornings with Greg Gaston and Eli Savoy. Weekday mornings from 7 to 10, right here on Sports 56 and 98.5 FM.
It's It's time for the ultimate Hot Wings Showdown at the World Championship Hot Wing Contest and Festival, Saturday, April 26th at the Memphis River Garden Park on Riverside Drive. See over 60 teams fighting for hot wing supremacy along with live blues, soul, and rock and roll, all in support of the Papa McDonald House. It's a sizzling day of fiery flavors, live music, and family fun, and you're invited. Get your tickets now at WorldWingFest.com, sponsored by RS Financial Group, Bank 3, ATC Fitness, and Universal Access. This is your delicious chance to make a difference.
We are ready to meet anyone on your new Hyundai from Gossett Hyundai on the Pike during the Hyundai Getaway Sales Event. Plus, you get America's best 10-year, 100,000-mile powertrain limited warranty. Listen to this, Mid-South 2024 Hyundai Venue Limited. We Gossett 22,317. How about 2024 Hyundai Elantra Limited? We Gossett 24,997. 2025 Hyundai Elantra SEL Convenience 25,260. And 2024 Hyundai Sonata SEL Standard 26,353. This is what deals are made of at Gossett Hyundai 1870 Covington Pike. Online, HyundaiGossett.com.
If you want it, we got it at Gossett Motor Cars.
341,155, MSRP 25,160. Elantra RU 821,411, MSRP 28,780. Convenience SU 856,185, MSRP 27,020. Sonata RA 415,696, MSRP 29,110. Includes all rebates and incentives. PF 895 excludes tax, title, and license. See dealer for complete details. Offer valid through end of the month with approved credit. Dealer stock only.
You're hungry for gourmet crust, the family that has been feeding Memphis since 1967. Charlie Hogan, Triangle Meat Company. Crust Triangle Meat for fresh beef, hamburger, and rub. Crust Triangle Meat for delicious pork, ribs, chops, and butter. And Crust Triangle Meat for Virginia Grove Run. Feeding lots of pork, Triangle Meat Company has all the meat you need. Shop Triangle Meat Company, 8 Monday through Saturday, 4 to 7, 19 Summer Avenue, 901-683-1192. Fresh or frozen, big or small, Crust Triangle Meat Company.
Now back to Wolo and Friends on Sports 56. Here once again is the voice of the Tigers, Dave Woloshin.
All we hear is
Welcome back in the Family Leisure Studios. Don't forget that preseason pool spa patio event is still going on. We've only maybe got another week or so because they always will change things. They've moved a lot of the pools and the spas, even the cold plunges out and bringing new stuff in, including patio furniture sets you can still get for under $800. And if you go, you can register to win either a pool, a spa, or a patio set free if your name is drawn. So stop by, sign up today. Tell them we sent you to Family Leisure. All right, we do a thing on Mondays. Elijah Seeger and I called Precious Metals. All right, real quick. I've got 2 bronze. I'll start with Victor Hovland, who won the Valspar over Justin Thomas. Both those guys now sharpening their game. They may be a factor. Don't forget, we got Augusta in just a couple of weeks. This was the 7th win on tour for Victor Hovland, but man, has he ever struggled. This came out of nowhere. This dude has had 2 new swing instructors since last year. He hadn't won in over a year.
That's insane.
This comes after 3 missed cuts and an 80 on the opening round of the Players and turns it around and wins the tournament. I got to give a bronze to Lindsey Vonn. After coming out of retirement just 4 months ago, she becomes the oldest person ever to medal in a World Cup event when she finished 2nd in Super G at Sun Valley. 40, the oldest ever to medal in a World Cup event. That is really something else. I got to give Derek Queen a silver medal. The freshman spun and scored to beat Colorado State in the best game to send Maryland to the Sweet 16. Walter Clayton knocks off the 2-time defending champion UConns with 2 dramatic threes. And then my gold, it's pretty simple. It's the SEC. 7 teams in, and in particular, Ole Miss and Padula. It's only the 2nd Sweet 16 that Ole Miss has ever participated in. I saw this, I think it was 2001. I was shocked, like the Sean Tui teams of the 80s never made it to the Sweet 16. No other team until Rod Barnes in 2001 took a team and they had that little kid Harrison that was such a good guard. That's the last time and the only time until now that an Ole Miss team ever made it into the Sweet 16. A lot of credit that you got to give to Chris Beard and to Padula and to this team that came out of nowhere. There's nobody expected them to be in the Sweet 16. Look who they beat to do this. North Carolina and Iowa State. Pretty impressive stuff. And I know they got 14 teams in. That's part of the reason why they got that many in the Sweet 16, but almost half the field. Come on. That's pretty darn good stuff. The SEC is living up to It Just Means More.
Yeah, my medals debut. I think you'll
Here
see
we
that.
go. Elijah Seegers, he's breaking it. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think you'll see that we have a lot of the same here. My bronze, though, I wanted to give a bronze medal to Tyrese Proctor of Duke. 22 points per game through the first 2 rounds of the tournament. And how about this? 79% from the field and 81% from 3. 13 for 16 through the first 2 rounds. This was a guy...
That's unheard of.
This is a guy that 2 years ago shot 32% from 3, below average. And he's shooting 41.5% from 3 on the year now. 13 for 16 in the NCAA tournament. How about that?
That's phenomenal. And it's proof that we all just think Cooper Flagg when we think of Duke. Did you know their smallest guy 6'6" that starts? I mean, they're really, hey, let's face it, they're probably the favorite to win this championship. I think Florida will have a say, Houston and Tennessee. That's the beauty of it. But Duke is probably the overall favorite.
Most impressive team in the tournament, for sure, about this far. My silver as well, I went with Derek Queen, too. Big-time game-winning shot against Colorado State after Jalen Lake hits the big-time 3 to put Colorado State up 1 with 12 seconds left to go. Tough running shot from Derek Queen. Like you said, great freshman NBA draft prospect. Carries Maryland to the Sweet 16, where they will face Florida, so they have a tall task ahead, but Derek Queen with a huge shot to boost Maryland over the Rams. My gold, I went with the SEC as well. Record-breaking 7 teams to the Sweet 16. We knew the top-seeded teams were going to be tough to beat, but like you said, Ole Miss and Arkansas, how about those 2 teams? After struggling a little bit in the middle of the season, especially with Arkansas starting 0-5 in SEC play, those 2 teams have really turned their seasons around and are clicking at the right time. Shout out to Ole Miss, too, for getting their women's team in the Sweet 16 as well, as they advance over Baylor yesterday.
How many of those 7 SEC teams will be in the Elite 8?
I think 4 get through. I don't know which 4, but I think 4 of the 7 get through.
I think you're spot on with that. That is a good call. All right, I have 2 rusts. I'll start with the U.S. men's national team. 2 losses this weekend at home in the CONCACAF tournament. This is after they've won the last 3 CONCACAF championships. 2 losses at home to teams that you're supposed to beat. Their new manager, who just took over a while ago, Mauricio Pochettino, has said, it's all right, we still have plenty of time to right the ship for the 26th World Cup. They better start doing that right now, because that was not a pretty last 2 games for the U.S. national team.
Wasn't one of those losses to Panama?
It was 2-1, I think. They gave up 2 goals to Panama.
Yikes.
Yeah. And then, this is to the NCAA Tournament Committee. Years ago, they decided they were going to go to these pods where you could play a West Coast or a Western segment duel in a pod in the middle of the country. Because usually they send the worst, like the last number 1 seed, even if it's UConn, they send them out west because there's just less teams out there, and that's the penalty for being the last number 1 seed. But they couch that by saying, but you know what? We'll hold part of the Western Conference, or not conference, the Western competition region. We will hold that in Raleigh, North Carolina, so that you're not penalized even though you're out west for your second Sweet 16 round. But they haven't really done a good job of that. For instance, in the Seattle region where Memphis just was, the only team out of the 8 that were there that could drive a car for their fans to go see this was Oregon.
Wow.
Every other one was a ride of at least 18 to 20 hours. Their geography is off. They tried to set this up to make it more favorable for fans. They wanted to sell more tickets. And they've just totally, in several cases, blown it.
Yeah, that one. I think we see that true with a couple other regions
Yeah.
as well. But the Seattle region being so remote, that is tough. My rust, though, along the lines of March Madness, are the Cinderella teams. This year, we don't really have any big Cinderella teams in March. Arkansas, being a 10 seed, is the highest seed remaining. And as for me, and as for some others who have echoed my sentiments, that I like having the lower seeded teams go this far to create the best possible matchups. But the inclusion of 1 or 2 Cinderella teams always spices things up and makes it fun. So not having that this year is a little bit of it's missed a little bit, but rust this year for the Cinderella teams in March.
Or the absence thereof. You know what? I used to do this. I'll do it tomorrow. So the best way to sort of figure out the region in terms of competitiveness usually is to count up the seed numbers from each one of them. So for instance, Auburn's a 1 and Michigan's a 5, so that's 6. And then Ole Miss is a 6, right? So, I'm sorry. Michigan is a 5. So you got 1, 5 is 6, 6 is 12 against Michigan State, which is a 2. So that's a total of 14. Now you do that all the way through. Obviously, Arkansas 10. That's probably going to be the one that has the highest count. We'll do that tomorrow. That'll do it for us. Johnny Radio is coming your way right around the corner. Tomorrow we will discuss more of the NCAA tournament, and we'll talk to Bob Kessling, who's University of Tennessee Volunteers, very much still in it. They've got 2 tough games if they were to survive, because most likely they'll face a Kentucky team that they have lost to twice this year, followed by most likely Houston, unless Purdue were up to upset them. Those are 2 tough teams to get to the Final Four. If Rick Barnes makes it this time, he will have earned it. That discussion will come your way tomorrow. Again, Johnny Radio is right around the corner, so don't go anywhere. Have a great day, everyone.